Welcome to the Lion's Share podcast, where we break down today's most impactful research and bring fresh insights from the academic frontier straight to you.
Okay, I want you to just for a second picture what it was like to be in England around, say, 1650. It's 9 in the morning. What are you drinking?
I'm guessing not a latte.
Not a latte, no. If you're an average person from the top of society all the way down, you are probably drinking beer.
Right, because the water was just too dangerous to drink straight.
Exactly. So maybe a weak ale for breakfast, some wine at lunch, maybe gin in the evening. You've got this whole country basically just buzzed on a depressant from morning till night.
It certainly gives you a new perspective on why the Middle Ages felt so stagnant. The whole civilization was literally dampening its own brain activity.
But then something changes. The chemistry of the nation shifts. Coffee and tea start coming in from the east.
So you're switching from a depressant to a stimulant.
A powerful stimulant.
Yeah.
And almost overnight, you get the Enlightenment. But, and this is the key from the source material we're looking at today, it wasn't just the caffeine. It was the architecture of the place they drank at.
The coffee.
The coffee house.
Yeah.
And that, I think, brings us right to the mission of our deep dive today. We are exploring what you could call the architecture of epiphany.
We're digging into what the experts call the fuzzy front end, the FFE.
Which sounds kind of soft and vague, but it's actually the most critical and I think most rigorous part of coming up with anything new.
Totally.
So we're moving past that whole eureka myth. We want to answer a very practical question. If you're a founder trying to find a business model or, a corporate leader staring at a failing R&D department, how do you actually structure serendipity? How do you build a coffee house inside a spreadsheet?
And that's the real tension, right? Structure versus serendipity. I mean, the fuzzy front end, by definition, is that chaotic, messy phase before you have a formal plan.
It's where all the ambiguity lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's also where the cost of being wrong is lowest. The problem is most companies try to just skip it. They want to get straight to the spreadsheets and the ROI projections.
Because the FFE feels like, well, it feels like magic. We love the myth of the lone genius, right?
Yeah.
Newton under the apple tree or some founder waking up with a fully formed idea.
But the work of Stephen Johnson, which is a big part of our stack today, really just tears that whole light bulb metaphor apart.
He does, doesn't he?
He says the light bulb is a terrible way to think about an idea. It's not a single thing. It's not a flash. Biologically, an idea is a hysteral. It's a network. It's a brand new constellation of your neurons all firing in sync for the very first time.
So, if an idea is a network, then innovation is just the act of putting your brain in a place that forces those new networks to form.
Precisely. And Johnson calls this environment a liquid network. If you think about the coffee house, it was dense, it was fluid. You had poets, scientists, merchants, all colliding, sharing bits of information.
It's what he calls the adjacent possible. The idea that you can't just leap to some brilliant future, you can only open the door that's right next to you.
And that collision is everything. He uses this great phrase that these are environments where ideas can have sex.
It's a vivid image, but it's so accurate. It's all about combination. And that leads to this other concept, the slow hunch, which I think is so important for anyone listening who feels frustrated that they haven't had their big breakthrough.
The Darwin example is the perfect case study for this.
Right. The story we all learn is that he read Malthus on population and bam, natural selection just appears in his head on one specific day in 1838.
But that's not what happened. Scholars went back and looked at his notebooks.
And he'd had the pieces for months beforehand.
Months. He had actually described the entire mechanism of natural selection perfectly, but he hadn't. He hadn't really thought the thought yet. It was incubating. It was a slow hunch that needed more time and more connections to become a full theory.
That really pushes back against the way we work now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The corporate world wants innovation sprints.
Hackathons. Breakthroughs in 48 hours.
And this suggests the really deep ideas might need years of just background processing.
It implies that being 100% efficient is actually the enemy of real innovation. You need some slack in the system for that hunch to grow.
Let's make this more concrete with an example from the reading. The Neo-Nurture Incubator. This is a perfect case of what's called exaptation.
Oh, this is one of my favorite stories in the whole stack. So the problem is infant mortality in developing countries. Western companies donate these $40,000 high-tech incubators.
And they work great for a little while.
For about a year. Then a fan breaks or a heating element burns out, and there are no spare parts, no technicians who know how to fix this complex medical device.
So it just becomes a very expensive paperweight.
Right. So this group, Design That Matters, they took a completely different approach, a liquid network approach. They didn't ask, how do we build a better incubator? They asked.
What's the most abundant resource in these villages?
Exactly. And the answer was car parts, specifically Toyota 4Runner parts.
Because there's a mechanic in every village who can fix a Toyota.
Yeah, with his eyes closed. So they designed the entire Neo-Nurture incubator using nothing but car parts.
It's just genius. The heating element,
Headlights,
the alarm if it fails.
a door chime. The power source is just a standard car battery. It wasn't new technology. It was a recombination of existing available parts. That is what combinatorial innovation looks like.
Okay, so we have the theory. Ideas are networks. They need these liquid environments. They're often slow hunches. But here's the tension I want to get into. That's all great for Charles Darwin or a nonprofit. But if you're a founder burning through your savings, you don't have 20 years. You need a business model right now.
And this is the pivot. We have to go from the biological theory of Johnson to the very tactical methodology of someone like Dan Lewis. He lays out a framework for what he calls the deliberate idea.
Right, which he separates from the spontaneous idea, your classic shower thought, and the insider idea, where you see a problem at your day job and decide to fix it.
The deliberate idea is for the person who says, I know I want to start a company, I don't have the idea yet. Lewis basically argues, you can force the slow hunch to speed up.
You can artificially create the coffeehouse collisions. And he starts with a tool that, honestly, most creative people would probably hate.
A matrix, a spreadsheet.
The ultimate anti-creativity tool.
Yeah.
But here, it's used as a constraint engine.
So walk us through the axes. The specificity here is really important, I think.
It is. Okay, step one is the y-axis.
Yeah.
Your customer types.
Yeah.
And Lewis is so clear on this. You can't just write men 1835. That's a census category, not a customer.
You need a psychographic.
Yeah.
Or a specific situation.
Exactly. Something like expats living in Singapore, or cyclical dieters, or stay-at-home dads, groups with very specific nagging problems.
And then on the x-axis, you have the business models.
Right. And again, not just sell something. You have subscription, freemium, marketplace, peer-to-peer, bundling, debt auctions.
Yeah.
All these different ways of capturing value.
So now you have this grid with maybe 50 empty boxes. And the work, the real cognitive labor, is forcing your brain to make a connection in every single one.
So you look at the intersection of, say, cyclical theaters and subscription model. Okay, that's kind of easy, maybe a meal kit service. But then you get cyclical theaters and peer-to-peer marketplace.
That's a bit weirder. Maybe a marketplace where people who've lost weight can sell their old fat clothes.
Or a betting market.
Yeah.
You and your friends wager on weight loss goals. The point isn't that every idea is a home run. The point is you are manually creating new neural pathways. You're forcing the liquid network to happen in your own head.
And Lewis says you can quickly dismiss the obvious non-starters, like maybe business intelligence for stay-at-home moms. But you have to pause on the weird ones.
You know, it's funny you say that. With the whole rise of the momfluencer economy, business intelligence for stay-at-home moms might actually be a SaaS unicorn waiting to happen.
See? That's the point. An idea that sounds absurd one year becomes brilliant the next because the context changes. But you never would have even considered it if you hadn't forced that collision in the matrix.
This whole structure, it seems like it solved what one of the HBR articles calls the oatmeal problem.
Oh, we've all been in that meeting. Someone stands at a whiteboard and says, okay, team, no bad ideas, let's brainstorm.
And you can just feel the energy drain from the room. It feels like wading through oatmeal.
It's paralyzing. The brain doesn't like infinite choice. It loves constraints. So the matrix, or other tools like SCAMPER, where you force yourself to substitute, combine, adapt, reverse, you're giving the brain a set of tracks to run on.
That SCAMPER method is basically what happened with the incubator, isn't it? What if we put the incubator to another use? What if we adapted it to use car parts?
It is. Or another one is 6-3-5 brainwriting. 6 people write down 3 ideas each in 5 minutes, then pass the paper. It forces volume, and it stops the loudest person in the room from dominating the conversation.
Okay, so we've used the matrix. We have 3 decent concepts. Lewis says this is the real danger zone. This is when people get excited and start designing logos.
They start playing business. It's a comfortable form of procrastination. You feel like you're making progress because you're picking a font, but you're avoiding the terrifying part, validation.
So Lewis proposes this aggressive, deep dive validation phase. And step 1 is get smart. He said spend 2 to 3 hours just reading everything about the industry.
Yeah.
Now, I have to ask, is that arrogant? Can you really get smart on a complex industry in an afternoon?
That's a fair challenge. I don't think the goal is mastery. The goal is vocabulary.
Okay.
You just need to know enough to ask intelligent questions. If you call a potential supplier and you don't know basic industry terms, they'll dismiss you immediately. You need to learn the language so you can start talking to people.
Which is the next step. And I think the one that makes people most uncomfortable, talk to strangers.
Get out of the building. Do not ask your mom. Don't ask your friends. They love you, so they will lie to you to protect your feelings. You need what he calls smokescreen tests.
I love his example of the coffee shop sign.
It's so simple. Go to a Starbucks, put a sign on your laptop that says, "Ask me about my new idea for a free latte." If you sit there for 2 hours and no one stops to talk to you,
Your idea is boring.
your value proposition is boring. It doesn't matter how pretty your spreadsheet was.
Or the idea of cold calling suppliers. I think
Yeah.
that's genius because it tests your unit economics before you've even built anything.
Exactly. For the neo-nurture idea, you'd call a headlight supplier. You'd act like you're a buyer. You ask for pricing at volume. You might discover headlights cost $50 a piece, which blows up your whole business model. You just saved yourself a year of R&D with one phone call.
You're getting street-level data to check against the Google Earth view from your matrix.
And honestly, it's about doing the scary thing first. It is scary to make that call. It's easy and comfortable to design a logo. The people who succeed do the scary thing.
Okay, I want to zoom out a bit. We've talked about the entrepreneur. What about the corporate leader? Because the sources also point to this huge problem inside big companies, the insider idea dilemma.
Right. This is the great tragedy of corporate innovation. You have people on the front lines who know exactly what's broken. They see the waste every single day.
They're living in the coffee house.
They are, but they have no way to act on what they know. The idea gets killed by politics or by rigid job descriptions.
The example is you go to your boss with an idea that could save $10 million, but it requires changing a system that your boss's bonus is tied to.
And that idea is dead on arrival.
So Johnson talks about things like Google's famous 20% time as a hunch cultivating mechanism. But with all the focus on efficiency today, does 20% time even really exist anymore?
In a lot of places, no, it's become a myth. And that is a huge strategic risk. If all your people are running at 110% capacity just doing their day jobs, there is zero room for the slow hunch to form.
So what's the managerial takeaway?
You have to build in slack. You have to create what the research calls psychological safety, which is a space where people feel safe enough to share their errors.
That point about errors in Johnson's work is fascinating. He says the big breakthroughs in science labs didn't happen when people were looking through the microscope.
No, they happened at the weekly lab meeting where all the scientists got together to talk about their mistakes, to talk about the noise in the signal.
What does that mean? Why is the mistake so valuable?
Because my mistake could be the missing piece to your puzzle. If I'm working on a drug and I keep getting this weird, unexpected side effect, I might see that as a failure. But you, sitting across the table, might realize that my side effect is actually a cure for a completely different disease you're working on.
Isn't that how Viagra was discovered? It was a failed heart medication?
It's the classic example. But if the culture punishes failure, I just hide that data. I only report my successes. And in hiding my error, I've killed the liquid network. I've prevented that connection from ever happening.
Which brings us to what might be the biggest tension in all of this, especially for an audience that's focused on IP. And that's this idea of closed versus open innovation, the story of GPS.
It's such a great story, and it starts with pure curiosity. It's 1957, Sputnik just launched, the world is panicking, but these two researchers at Johns Hopkins, they're basically just geeking out.
They're just hacking the signal for fun.
It's fun. They realize they can track the satellite by listening for the change in the pitch of its beat the Doppler effect.
Right?
So they figure out how to map the satellite's exact orbit. They run to their boss to show him, and he asks this incredible billion-dollar question.
He inverts the problem.
He says, okay, if you can find the satellite from the ground, can you find a position on the ground from the satellite?
Because at the time, the U.S. Navy had nuclear submarines that had no idea where they were.
Exactly, and that's how GPS was born. But, and this is the key insight for today, it only became the multi-trillion-dollar industry it is now, the thing that powers Uber and Tinder and modern farming. Because Ronald Reagan opened the platform up to the public in the 1980s.
The original inventors thought they were just solving a military problem. They had no idea they were helping our cyclical Dieter from the Matrix find the nearest gym.
None. If the military had kept GPS as a closed, secret system, the entire app economy might not exist. It raises a really tough question for anyone listening. Why are we so obsessed with protecting our IP?
We build these walls around our R&D departments. We make people sign NDAs.
But the history of GPS and the internet itself shows that connecting IP creates so much more value than protecting it. A closed system can only solve the problems its creators already know about. An open system solves problems the creators never even imagined.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize all this. We've got Lewis's matrix, Johnson's liquid networks, the coffeehouse GPS. Let's distill it down into some clear takeaways.
I think you can really break it down into 3 mandates for 3 different groups.
Okay, first up, the founders, the entrepreneurs out there.
Stop waiting for a lightning bolt to strike. It's not going to happen. You have to build the structure that creates the epiphany. Use the customer versus business model matrix. Force those weird connections. The structure creates the serendipity. And then get on the phone and call a supplier before you even think about printing a business card.
Right. Second, for the corporate leaders, the VPs of innovation.
You have to get your teams out of the lab and into that conference room meeting mode, but not for status updates, for sharing errors. You need to create a formal mechanism for people to share their interesting failures, their slow hunches, the things that aren't relevant to this quarter's targets, but might be the whole future of the company in 5 years.
And finally, a takeaway for everyone.
Innovation is combinatorial. Think about that incubator. The answer to your biggest problem might not be some brand new thing you have to invent. It might already exist in a totally different industry, like car parts in a junkyard, just waiting for you to see it and connect it. You have to look for the car parts.
I want to leave everyone listening with just one final thought. We talked about the slow hunch, that idea that sits in the back of your mind for years. What is that half-formed idea for you? That little puzzle you just can't quite solve?
And maybe ask yourself, why haven't you solved it?
The reason might not be that you're not smart enough. It might be that the missing piece isn't in your head at all. It's in the head of someone you haven't talked to yet. You need to go find your coffee house.
Chance favors the connected mind.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for tuning into the Lion's Share podcast. If you enjoyed today's discussion, share it with a friend and join us next time for more ideas worth talking about. We'll see you next time.